Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm Aaron Hale, and this is Point of Impact. I've made it my job for this show to bring you excellent guests and content to help bring you closer to the life you want to live. Deeper connections with the people around you, healthier, fatter body and mind, help you keep and invest more of that money so that you can truly live the life you desire, become the person you truly know you are, and to ultimately to make that kind of footprint in this world you truly want to make, becoming the point of impact. Let me ask you, are you satisfied with that day job, the 9 to 5, your W-2? Are you earning what you believe you deserve? Is it getting you closer to where you want to be? My guest today said no. For decades as a mechanical engineer, he was working in the oil and gas industry, but he wasn't satisfied with his income and wasn't feeling entirely fulfilled with the job. For a while, and you could find him working the day job, an evening job, and a weekend job, and still not quite satisfied. He combined his talents and abilities, his education, experience, and that work ethic with his passion as a self-proclaimed car fanatic. And he started a side hustle. He cultivated that pet project into a business that generated more revenue than his entire W-2 income. And after a few years of building that business, he sold it for millions. After which, he started the process over with another business. Today, Tony Whatley is helping others become side hustle entrepreneurs as an Amazon bestseller of Side Hustle Millionaire. Today, Tony is helping others become side hustle entrepreneurs. As an Amazon best-selling author of Side Hustle Millionaire, founder of the coaching company, and host of the podcast of the same name, 365 Driven, he's teaching others how to step out of their W-2, combine their passion with a little know-how, and start that side hustle, chasing the passion. Today's discussion, we talk about how easy it is to start a business on paper, but how difficult it is, and how so few people can get over the mindset, those limiting factors, the self-limiting fears and doubts that keep people from starting that business, taking the leap, and maybe being a little vulnerable. There is some nuts and bolts in this conversation about starting a business, but a whole lot of it just has to do with the hustle part of side hustle. I hope you enjoy it. For a moment, though, I would like you to pause and consider there's somebody in your network, in your circle right now, who's waiting to be connected with somebody just like Tony. And all it takes is for you to make that connection. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, the way you make that connection is to do all the engagement stuff. Like, subscribe, follow, give it 5 stars, leave a review, make a comment, and then share it. Whether it's on your social media or sending the link in a text or an email, send it to somebody who you think is going to benefit from, starting that side hustle they've always been dreaming about. And you would have my most sincere appreciation. With that, and without further ado, my conversation with Tony Whatley, the very driven side hustle millionaire. Tony, thank you so much for joining me on the Point of Impact. I'm really excited to get started and get into this conversation, dig into your background and what you're doing today. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Aaron, I'd like to thank you for your service to this country. I'm a son of a veteran. My dad is a U.S. Marine, Vietnam combat vet, so I grew up in a very patriotic household, and I understand the sacrifices you signed up to join the military, so thank you for that.
Hey, you're very welcome, and thank you for your family service. You're a mechanical engineer by trade, and you worked in the oil industry. Where did this this side hustle get started? How did it get started? And you just kind of took the ball and ran with it. Let's start back with a little bit of your beginning.
Yeah, I would say that I grew up lower middle class in a suburb of Houston that had a really good school districts. My mother, being a Japanese immigrant, really valued education, so she wanted to make sure we lived somewhere that had a good school system. My dad, after the military, worked in a chemical refinery, so Houston kind of was the place to come to for that kind of work. And they taught me the value of hard work. They realized that I wasn't going to get anything. I really only got birthday gifts or Christmas gifts. I didn't have an allowance and things like that. So my parents were very supportive of me knocking doors and mowing people's yards and washing cars and walking dogs and raking leaves and anything I could to get money, because that's how I was able to afford skateboards and video games and bicycles and things like that. So I've always been willing to go do what it takes to get what I wanted to have. And that kind of just becomes, I guess, a culture or a way that you believe in things, that nothing's going to be handed to you in life. And so when I started to think about my future, I wanted to go make six figures. And everybody tells you need to go be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. And it takes money to make money, and all these, false beliefs that we hear growing up. So I basically worked in the chemical refineries just like my dad did. I was a pipe fitter helper. Then I became a welder and doing all these different construction roles. And I was also waiting tables on the weekends. And that's how I was able to put myself through engineering school. And it took me 7 years because I was working full-time construction, going to school at night, sleeping about 3 hours a day, and being broke and depressed and sleep deprived. It was just a lot of bad times. Every time I hear people like talking about their great days in college, I just kind of think about they must have had it a lot easier than I did. And so that's what happened is I pursued engineering to really, hopefully be the first one of the family to make over $100,000 a year. And I did. Within 2 years in the engineering, career in offshore oil and gas, I was there. And I just really felt like I was being held back a lot of times in my career because I've always been someone that was an overachiever or high grades, or, someone that was really competitive. And I knew I could take on a lot more responsibilities because when I graduated, I was 27. I wasn't the youngest person anymore, right? I had a lot of practical experience working in the refineries and learning things. And eventually they even had me working in the engineering department, even though I wasn't fully graduated yet. So I just felt like there was a lot of times people would tell you to pay your dues and stay in line and wait your turn and things like that. And it kind of frustrated me. And I was always looking for a creative outlet. And so at the time, this was around late 90s, I started thinking about what could I teach myself to maybe make some extra money? And for me, I was always curious about building web pages because to me, I'm a very artistic person. I like to visualize things and see things and build things and create things. And so I thought, if I could just teach myself how to create this artwork on a computer screen, a website, graphic design, photography, that maybe someone would pay me to do that kind of stuff. And then they did. So eventually I was trading websites for car parts. I would call manufacturers and ask them like, hey, I see your website needs an update, or you need a website, and I need some parts for my Trans Am that I have. And they would trade me car parts and wheels and exhaust systems and things like that to build them things, or do graphic design or make ads for magazine articles for them. And so eventually that led to me building an online community, which grew to about 300,000 registered members, and it became the largest General Motors performance community on the internet. And we were making about $400,000 a year profit about 3 years in. And we ended up selling that company for couple million in 2007 to a private equity company that kind of took it on and grew it even then. And now that brand still exists today. It's been over 20 years, but I spun off a bunch of different automotive-based businesses along the way, and retail and wholesaling and drop shipping and things like that, and consulting and marketing and all kinds of things that I've done from the automotive side. So it was really an itch to, scratch in the creative side that I wasn't getting from my corporate career. But my corporate career did teach me a lot, and I did value all the experience that I had from leadership perspective and investing in me and understanding processes and systems and management and risk mitigations and financials and all these different things that I picked up from the corporate side. So to me, all the things I learned in the corporate side make small business very easy.
That I can definitely feel the passion there, and it correlates quite a bit with, my personality as well. Very creative. I love working with my hands. Plus, I was never very good at waiting in line, which, of course, being in the military for 14 years was a bit difficult. Graded on my personality. However, it also taught me quite a few great skills and habits. But you were able to mix both passion and your talent for hard work, entrepreneurship, creativity, and create this business. And you did it in your off time. You did it, or you did it outside your W-2 job. How did you find the time, or was it just something that you did? Like, how long did it take you to build this thing up and realize its earning potential?
It's crazy to think about, but after going through 7 years of working full time and going to school at night, when I finally got my entry-level engineering job, I was getting home around 4:30 in the afternoon, and it felt like I had a part-time job after going through 7 years of that hustle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was really honest with myself, it's like, what do most people do? They just get home and they sit on the couch and they watch TV or they play video games and just waste a lot of time. And the question that I had to answer for myself is, are you where you want to be? And the answer for me was no. I was not where I was wanting to be. I was always grateful for what I had. I've always had respect and gratitude for the things that I have, but I was always wanting more because I didn't want to be poor my entire life. And so when I started thinking about what are the things I can learn or skills or things like that, so I was being more focused on monetizing and learning how to do new skills. I've always been very curious and reading books and teaching myself things. And, back then we didn't have YouTube and we didn't have all these people like me teaching all these shortcuts and doing things the faster way. I mean, I literally had to read magazines and books at the library and old stuff and try to figure things out. Then I bought books on teaching me how to code in HTML, and I would just get home and I would practice those kind of things. And so, I think that one of the biggest problems I see that's holding up a lot of people in the entrepreneurship space, especially nowadays on social media, is they're not willing to do what it takes. They want the title. They want to say, "Hey, I'm an entrepreneur and I make my own decisions and I have freedom." But they're not willing to do what it takes, guys. I mean, you just heard me. I started up a multi-million-dollar company while I was working full time, and I'm still waiting tables. And even 2 years after I had that first job, from 2000 to 2002, I was going to my engineering career salary job, which wasn't a lot back then. It was probably $45,000 salary. And I was still waiting tables at least 6 nights a week and on weekends. And I was still working as a mechanic at a local shop on Saturday mornings until probably 2 in the afternoon, and then going to my waiting tables job. So here I am with an engineering degree, working full time, where most people would have just said, that's good enough. I was going to put it on that apron and going to work with restaurants in the evening to make an extra $100-150 a day. And I was also working on cars. At the same time, I was teaching myself how to learn how to build websites. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy for people that have that same question, am I where I want to be? And if they're not doing what it takes. I've had people in my mastermind and people in my, coaching groups that, had to, like, they really fear having to get another job to be able to fund their dream. And I just look at them and I ask, if your biggest fear is that you have to go get another job to be able to build more runway for your entrepreneurial dream, you don't have what it takes because you're not willing to do what it takes.
Yeah, I was one of those people, and it's like the Matrix, right? You wake up, you go do the 9 to 5, you come home tired, so you flop down on the couch, turn on the television, play a video game. You're up until watching the late show or something. You get just a few hours of sleep or whatever. Do it all over again, and you're watching these people on television, or you're hearing about people that are just chasing passions, and you're thinking, one day, I would love to be in that guy's shoes, but it's going to take me forever doing what I'm doing. But you don't. It's like people don't realize that they can't. They just. In my case, I was cured of television, in video games pretty quickly. I had lots of time on my hands. Yeah, in fact, at the same time I was curator of television, I became a retiree also for all intents and purposes. So I had plenty of time to chase whatever passions I wanted to. I had to learn. So for you, you were both chasing passions. I'm guessing, that working at the mechanics shop on Saturdays, that was more hobby than like side job, but you were making money as well. And then you created this this online community. You sold that off, and then what did you do next?
Around that time, I had also built a drop shipping company selling custom wheels, Deviate Motoring. I still own that business. And it was getting close to 7 figures in revenue just as a side business. And I was probably making $150,000 a year just on that side business by answering a few emails a day. I mean, it's really low time involvement. And I position myself as an expert, when I understand what fits your car and what looks best on your car. And I've had several magazine features, a lot of sponsored, and I've built over 40 project cars. I built that authority and that reputation in the space where people trusted me with their choices for the wheels on their cars. And they also knew that I wasn't going to run off with their money because I had plenty of money at that point. So when people are buying wheels that are between $3,000 to $5,000 a set, that's a pretty big purchase. And unfortunately, in the industry, a lot of people have taken that money and just disappeared. So you have to have someone that knows what fits and is going to be around and has been around. So, that business became very simple, but it took years for that business to be able to, sustain what it is. So I don't want people to think like, well, how do you make $150,000 a year just answering emails? Well, you heard me. It took me 10 years of growing that reputation and showing up every day in order to be able to create that. And I think that what most people are unwilling to do is, like you said, you have time, you have plenty of time, but we all have the same amount of time and it's our lifetime. And so we can bellyache about where we're at and we can think, hey, if I start something maybe in 5 years, I'll have some financial or some freedom in my life. And if you don't want to take the actions, realize that same 5 years is going to pass no matter what. So 5 years from today, when you look back, you realize like, man, I should have started. So to me, time is always moving forward. What you do between now and then is up to you. So I don't like to be the one that ever complains about my situation. I just kind of do something about it. So, your businesses will become, there are challenges with all businesses. There are always going to be challenges, especially the first 2 years of the startup phase. And I think that too many people nowadays, with all this abundance of information that they have readily available at their fingertips, they spend way too much time consuming instead of creating. So they're always reading books, they're always listening to podcasts, they're always watching YouTube, they're always asking advice or hiring coaches. But the good ones started taking action the same time they started consuming, they started creating, because the best entrepreneurs are the ones that learn as they go. And they're okay getting punched in the face and falling down once in a while and learning lessons. And these are all things that we, become better from going through. A lot of times people think about recessions, but our country really hasn't had an official recession since 2008. So if you haven't been in business, 14 years now? You really haven't really gone through a recession as a business owner. It's been pretty easy on the backside of that wave as it's been climbing and the economy has been in a bull run and things have been pretty easy and technology has evolved to make it more easy for entrepreneurs. But man, if we really go through a really hard depressive cycle, people are going to see who's been swimming with no clothes on. So, make sure that you're paying attention and learning from people who have been through that fire.
A good business should be built to be recession proof, right? Everybody, everything goes through tides. Yeah, markets go up and down, but that's why you build that loyalty base. This is why you build a brand, and that's why you need to start taking action right now. Like you said, part of that action is getting the word out. Creating content rather than just consuming it. And you said you built that brand. You made yourself known as an industry expert, and you did that just by writing articles. But you had to be that expert, which also takes the action. So what while creating um, these businesses, what were some of the lessons you learned? Like, and what is like the first step when somebody wants to take action on when they're drew?
Yeah, I think a lot of times early entrepreneurs make the mistake of starting something that they don't really have a lot of interest or passion in because they focus too much on the money. I think that money is just like anything else in life. If you chase something, they usually run away from you. So if you're always chasing money, at pretty good odds it's running away from you. You have to learn how to attract money. And the way we attract money is being interested in something. So we put out a different energy, a different vibe that we really enjoy what we're doing. We have a lot of interest or curiosity that we're willing to invest the time and the money to learn to become an expert and authority in something. That puts out a different energy. You start to attract people that are interested in that same subject or the same product or service. And when they hear that you speak about it and they can see the passion and hear the passion, they're going to be more likely to do business with you. So I don't like when I come across these junior entrepreneurs that are always got a different business card every 6 months. I've been on social media long enough to realize like you're not going to make it doing that. You really have to stick with something at least 12 months and not half-ass it. I think too many people dabble in stuff. They get into things, podcasting, YouTube channels, all these different things. They'll half-ass things for about 3 months, expect some kind of a professional result, but then they're not doing things at a professional level, and they're wondering why they're not getting results. So then they back off and they go do something else. They pivot or they reinvent themselves and they go hard at something else for 3 months, 6 months, and then they kind of peter out again. So to me, I understand that if I'm going to get into something, I don't want to half-ass it because the market really doesn't care if you're new at things. The market's very, very vicious. They don't really care if you're new to things. They don't care if you're a beginner. They're not going to cut you any slack. You will be compared against people who have been doing it longer. So you better be doing it as good on quality level, or at least presenting as a quality level if you want to be taken serious in the market, and then be willing to go at least 12 months showing up consistently and putting in that work. So, I just think that too many people do things that won't really lead them to the financial goal or the lifestyle goal that they want. And they get into businesses because they think things are easy instead of doing things that are, really lighting their fire. And they're not willing to do the work. Again, it goes back to they're not being willing to doing what it takes. And so I always look at the intersection of what is the lifestyle that you would like to have? What is the interest or the curiosity or the resources that you currently have available or you're willing to learn or invest in? And then ask yourself, are you willing to do what it takes? And I think most people maybe get one of those out of the three. So, man, find something you're interested in. Ask yourself if it's a viable option to get you to the lifestyle or the income level that you would like to achieve, because a lot of business models are kind of dead end and they will never get you to 7 figures a year or 8 figures a year, whatever people want to say, right? So just be really honest. Is this a really good business model? And is it really going to be able to create the impact that I want to create? And if so, go all in.
I think it was mentioned in your book, Side Hustle Millionaire. The very first thing before you get into the nuts and bolts of starting a side hustle business and becoming an entrepreneur is mindset strength. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, mindset strength is everything. I think that there's a reason the first 2 chapters of my book are based on mindset and overcoming objections and bullshit excuses to be real. And I think a lot of people hear what mindset is, but they don't really understand it. And I think that there's a lot of times people just struggle with confidence and they struggle with belief in themselves and what's possible for themselves, because we are all conditioned and programmed, if you will, with these belief systems from our parents, our teachers, our peers, our friends. And when you have a family that never was, financially successful, you tend to think, well, I guess that's all I'm meant to do the same way. I can't be more successful than my parents and things like that, right? So there's a lot of belief systems that we carry in. Or maybe you grew up with a set of parents that saw somebody that was really wealthy and they'd be like, oh, it must be nice. Look at that rich asshole, right? And so you've created these limiting beliefs in yourself that you may not even realize that I don't ever want to be rich because then I'll be perceived as a rich asshole. So these people will subconsciously sabotage themselves and fall back into the comfort level because they want to be accepted by their old friends and their old family instead of doing things that meet their potential. So mindset is understanding what are the limitations that we have or what things that we adopt as children mostly, bringing into our adulthood, what our potential is, and then starting to question everything and asking, why do I believe that? Will that belief that I currently carry, or that opinion, or the political party or whatever, like, just understand, like, will that deliver me to the end goal that I have, that I'm visualizing in my life? And if the answer is no, then you have to break those kind of things, understand that this is an awareness moment that we all go through. Guys, I'm 50 years old and I still go through these awareness moments. It's something that we should look forward to, because anytime we have a really strong belief that's got an emotional backing to it, we should ask, where did that belief come from? Who did I learn that from? Why did they teach me that? Because there's usually a good reason. Then you have to ask yourself, does that serve me? Is it going to get me where I want to be? And if the answer is no to that final question, then you really need to do some internal work to realize, like, I need to start changing or evolving that belief that will help me get to the level that I want to achieve. And when you can start to do that, that's what we call awareness. That's what wisdom is. I think a lot of times people, especially nowadays in this hot, heated political climate that we see out there, especially on mainstream media, is that most people build identities around old opinions and old belief systems that they carried into their adulthood, because they don't want to offend their mother or their aunt or their best friend who sees them as one way, even though their opinions have changed. And, we read books like Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. We realize that true thought leaders are willing to change their opinions based on new data, new evidence, new experience, new revelations, new research. So opinions, no matter how bold you were yesterday about them, could change today given new information. But most people would not openly admit that they've changed their opinion. They would rather hold on to their old identity, and that's what keeps most people stuck. So I mentioned politics a few times. I'm not highly political, but let's use conservatives or liberals right now, two hot topics in the media. Well, if you grew up like I did in a very conservative household and you just believed everything about conservatism, you would never even think about listening to anything the other side says, because your identity is built in one thing. But let's say that you learn new things, new evidence unveils itself, new wisdom, new experience, and you start to realize, like, maybe they're not completely wrong. You would never open your mind and say publicly, well, I kind of agree with them on these points, because your identity is so baked into who you used to be that you're unwilling to do that publicly. Well, that's what thought leaders will different. Thought leaders will be like, hey, I used to believe that, I learned this, and now I believe this, and here's why. So you must be always willing to be bold with your opinions, but not create your identity around your opinions. And that's a lot about mindset.
It takes a lot of self-awareness, and it takes a certain level of vulnerability and even courage, because those, work hand in hand, just to admit you're wrong or that you've changed your opinion. But that's part of learning. That's part of the process of growing, is to realize, and we know, 10 years, we're not the same people we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And we're not going to be the same people in minutes. So yeah, it is, but it is really hard, because we have those mindsets, we have this framework in our paradigm of the world, and it gets really ingrained. You're absolutely right. So let's say somebody, they're tired of their W-2. They have this vision, where they want to go, who they want to be. They want to chase their passion and turn it into lucrative business. They're ready to go. They're ready to take action, and they have that mindset strength. They're ready to learn. Where do they go from here?
I'll give you a good mindset answer to that. When I first got started helping people start up new businesses, this was almost 20 years ago, 2002, around 2003, I helped over 150 people back then become new business owners so they could advertise on my website. And some of those businesses became 7, 8, and 9-figure companies over the course of that next 15 years. And so a lot of the times when I think about starting a new business, I would ask people, even today, what is your financial goal? Maybe there's somebody watching this, maybe somebody listening to this, and I say, hey, what's your financial goal for this business? And the funny thing about it is, I would say that most of you listening or watching this, you probably have some financial goal in your mind. And here's where I can read your mind. Most of you have created a financial goal to replace the income that you're currently earning. That's it. So if you're making $56,000 a year, you're thinking, I need to start a business that makes $56,000 a year. Or if you're $250,000 a year salary, I need to start a business that makes $250,000 a year. And I started to see this trend over and over and over and over, and it's repeated over a decade now, that people had really specific financial goals for their business based on their own self-limiting beliefs of where they're valuable in the workforce. Because think about this, when we lose our job or we're laid off, we go to the job boards, we start applying for the roles that we have some experience in, we can see the salary numbers posted, so we know what the market value of that position is, which was we've created our identity. Like you mentioned when we started, I'm a mechanical engineer, I was a project manager. So if I was to build an identity around as like, I'm an engineer and I'm a project manager and I've had this many years of experience, therefore it paid me $240,000 a year. So that's what I'm worth. That's my earning potential. So we create this limiting belief based on what our bosses think that we're worth, or we're really humbled by asking for that pay raise, that 5% raise, or maybe you get the title promotion, they give you the title, but they don't really give you the raise. So we're always being defined by our net worth and our income and our earning potential. So one of the things people need to understand is that there is no limitation when it comes to entrepreneurship. So quit thinking that you just need to replace your current income. If you build the right business, you may be able to make that kind of money in 1 month instead of 1 year. And that sounds like a big dream, but its potential is there nevertheless. Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to pick the right business model? Are you willing to do what it takes? So there really is no cap to your earning potential when you step into the field of entrepreneurship. So all the self-limiting beliefs of what you think you're worth, what your boss has told you that you're worth, the most you've ever earned in your life, what your parents have told you, what your degree has created, these upper level boundaries, they don't exist in entrepreneurship.
However, are you saying they shouldn't have a revenue goal for the business? Because isn't that what most corporations do? They set sales expectations, sales goals, revenue goals. Where should they set their sights? How should they? What kind of goals should they set for themselves when creating this business?
Yeah, you're correct. All businesses should have a revenue. I'd rather have a profit goal, to be real. I think too many people chase revenue. Revenue feeds the egos, but it doesn't feed the family. That's what profit does. There's literally 8-figure business owners out there, some of them on the speaking circuit, that will tell you that they have a 10 million plus revenue company, but they're only earning 10%, maybe even losing money, maybe even breaking even. I mean, literally there are better entrepreneurs out there in the 6-figure range than some of these 8-figure owners, because that 6-figure business owner might be bringing home more profit at the end of the year, which to me makes them a more efficient and a better entrepreneur than someone that just chases revenue. So I'm big on profit. Now, you should have those goals, but understand that they are not limited by your earning potential. That was my only point there. I think too many people set really low goals based on what they think that they need to replace. I had that same kind of a limited belief when I got into this space. When I was back then, I was thinking, man, if I could just make $6,000 a month, that'd be pretty good. It'd replace my income and I'd be doing pretty well. And within 3 months, I was making over $10,000 a month. And I was like, oh, wow. This is more than a hobby. This is actually like a legit business. And then and only then I started to think maybe I need to go create one of those LLCs or whatever that is. And maybe I need to go do some trademark work and understand what that is. So I illustrate that because I didn't have all the answers. I just got started, and eventually I was doing things to create that level of profit. And then and only then I started going down the corporate path and understanding like all the entrepreneurship and the tech terminology and the protections and intellectual properties and contracts and all these things. But the important thing is just to get started, but understand that, be realistic with yourself. Is that business that you want to start scalable? Is it something that you can actually create a lifestyle that you dream about? Not just the one that you have right now, but what is the one that you dream about? Because I'll tell you, I learned some lessons building hand-built widgets and things like that at the kitchen table. A lot of things, people are crafts and arts and crafty, and you go, oh, I'll just build these little things. I can get home from work and I can sit at the kitchen table and assemble these things, and I'll sell a few of those. And I did that for about a year, and it replaced my waiting tables job, but it didn't create something that was scalable because, one, there wasn't enough customers available. It was never going to grow that big. And two, it was consuming a lot of my time. So I couldn't scale my time at the same level. So I had created a little widget business that really didn't make enough money to do anything but replace my waiting tables side job. So the digital space and the entrepreneur space and the things that we think about in the internet, you no longer have to build a business on Main Street with your name on the front window. The entire world is potentially your customer base if you build the right product or service. And you carry the cell phone around with you all day. You've got the internet nowadays. So why limit yourself to your city, your zip code, or your main street in your small town?
Well, you touched on that mindset again with limiting beliefs and limiting yourself by how much revenue or income you're already making. And one of the exercises I love to use on myself and when I'm talking to others about the same thing is what would it look like if it were easy? What would it look like if in blank? What would it look like if you added 1 0, 2 0, 3 zeros to the end of that income? And then it's that paradigm shift, that framing shift, just using your imagination and then working backwards. When you were talking about it's starting this business and you've got the passion, you've got a vision of what it's supposed to look like, and you have the will and the know-how to do this, whatever it is, make the widgets. What about demand? What about having a market for it? What if nobody wants your widgets, or nobody's buying widgets? Is there? How do you know that you've got a product or a service that will sell?
Yeah, that's a good one. I love working backwards from financial goals. We'll use revenue because it's based on sales figures. So let's say that you build an average business and you're netting 15% profit at the end of the year. So if you sell $1 million in anything, you'll make $150,000 in profit. Kind of simple math. So if $150,000 a year is your dream income or something that you could be happy with, then you need to think, okay, well, how do I build something that I can sell $1 million of with a 15% profit margin? And then you work backwards. So how do I sell $1 million? Well, you can get creative there, because if I sold something that cost $1 million, like small aircraft or a house, or I was building the house, you can have one sale and hit $1 million, or 2 $500,000 things, or 10 $100,000 things. And you kind of do this math and you kind of divide it down. So you may get down to the widgets, but realize you got to sell a whole lot of t-shirts, because there's a lot of apparel people out there always want to start t-shirt companies because they think it's easy. It's not. It's one of the hardest businesses there is. But a $20 t-shirt, you might make $5 profit. You would have to sell a lot of t-shirts to a lot of people to make $1 million in revenue in t-shirts, to be able to make $150,000 net. So always think about what is the sales goal, assuming the profit margin's in place, and just keep dividing things to understand how many units of these things do I need to sell to create that total sales volume. And you'll find that one of the things I always teach people is try to sell the most expensive thing as possible, because sales is sales. Get into things that are selling very expensive. Like I mentioned my wheel business early. I don't sell cheap wheels. There's an entire market of Chinese cast aluminum, crap quality, high production wheels that you can buy an entire set for $1,500 or less, maybe even $1,000 on closeout. I don't want to sell $1,000 sets of wheels, because it takes the exact same amount of effort for me to sell a $6,000 or a $15,000 set of wheels as it does to sell a $1,000 set of wheels. And if the profit margins are the same in both of those, I will make a lot more money per sales transaction selling expensive things. So think about that. If I can sell the most expensive things, or be the person that's the broker, because I may not have the resources to be able to buy these things to sell, but you can always become the broker, the guy that makes the deals, the guy that goes and finds the seller and goes and finds the buyer. You can always be that connector person. Go sell expensive things, make your 15% commission on those things, and you will earn a lot more the same amount of effort.
All right. So you're now have the mindset. You understand the business, and there's a demand for it. There's a market for it. What about the nuts and bolts? As far as accounting, hiring, operations. How does somebody that has only gotten a W-2 check, right? Paycheck, learn what's the administration of business?
Yeah, good question. So don't overthink it. You can actually have a entity set up probably within a week nowadays. And here's the thing, you can go create an LLC. You register through that. You can go through your Secretary of State. You can create an entity is what they would call that. LLC is pretty easy. And a limited liability corporation is what an LLC does. And what the main reason for having something like that is to keep your business separate from your personal assets. So limited liability is exactly what it sounds. It basically, if you were to build a business and you run it into the ground and it goes bankrupt, it gives you a protection against getting into your personal assets. They're not going to come take your house and all your personal assets and all your money because your business went bankrupt. So you always want to make sure you have that protection. That's why you go create an LLC. Next, once you get the EIN number, your employee number from the government, that's basically, if you think about that, that's like your social security for your business. Easiest way to think about that. That allows you to start filing federal and state taxes. And then you can go create a business checking account, which is all you need. You don't need a business savings account. You really need a checking account with some kind of a card that you can use for payments and things like that to attach to that business account. So that can be done online, pretty easy. And then you really didn't have to create an LLC with the business name, because that LLC could be a holding company that owns several DBAs doing business as, or it can own other LLCs. So, my last name is Whatley, Hale. You can create Hale Holdings, which is never going to be your marketing name, but it could be the LLC that holds all the other businesses within it, owns all these other businesses. And so you can create brand names that are all owned by Hale Holdings. And you have this entity now that's kind of protecting you, and you have these different assets you can spin off or scale individually. So it's not really that complicated to go build the structure. And then one of the other things is you need some kind of a payment processor. How am I going to get paid, right? That's easy. Nowadays, people use PayPal, they use Stripe. There's several online business models where people can use a credit card to pay you for your product, your services. And so once you have your LLC, your business checking account, and a way to get paid, you really have what it takes structure-wise to go do business. Pretty simple when you think of it that way.
Yeah, in fact, we've done just what you described with our real estate, with our Fudge company. We've actually created quite a few LLCs. Now we have acquisition companies in various states that are held in our Wyoming holding company, and we also have separate entities just for the management of the real estate versus the acquisition and holding. And we also have DBAs, the brand face of each of those companies. And didn't, just like you said, it took some learning, took some help, and I would also, on top of that, or piggyback on that, recommend that when somebody's using or creating an LLC, that they should go through an attorney. I mean, it takes no time to go to their state's, the Department of State, create an LLC, but then they'll link their personal checking account, or they'll put their home address as the managing partnership or so, then pierce the veil of that liability pretty quickly, pretty easily. And an attorney is a really smart way to go. It doesn't cost all that much to have somebody else do it for you the right way. And it would definitely cost you a lot less down the road when it comes to real estate, especially, for example, there are professional tenants that love to get past the LLC veil, if there is one, and go after as much as they can. Okay, so how about when growing and scaling? When you've got your PayPal, you've got your maybe your LLC, your entity, you've got your bank account, maybe you start a website. How do they get the word out?
Yeah, I think that the way we scale is understanding what the processes and systems are. And eventually you will have people. So I think it's good to visualize your organizational chart of where you want to be in 3 to 5 years and highlight all the roles and the positions and things like that and the way they stack on the hierarchy. But then understand that those roles are basically all you until you fill in one at a time. And so you would have roles and responsibilities defined for each of those positions, just like you would have in a normal company, because you want to be a normal company. You want to eventually grow to that. So create the structure, start to follow the things. The processes sound really confusing to most people, but what's a process? It's one procedure within a system. And a system is very simple. Like, what is a sales system? What is your onboarding system? What is your manufacturing, your operational system? Like, these are all individual systems that you can think about them as silos, right? And so within each of those systems, you would have a series of processes, which are just procedures that you would follow or your employees would follow to be able to make sure that you're doing things properly. The things that were sales, that'd be how many calls we're doing, how do we call, what is the script that we're using, how do we handle objections? Like, each of those would be individual processes within a sales system, follow-ups, like all these different things for systems. And once you have that created, now you have something that you can follow and repeat and measure yourself against your KPIs, your key performance indicators. We would have like, what are the numbers on our dashboard that tell us the health of the company or the trajectory of the company? And as we start to work through that, the company will start to grow and it'll break somewhere. There's always going to be a breakdown in something. Well, then you look at your processes and your systems and you understand, what are the things I need to refine, or do I need more resources? Do I have to hire somebody to do this? Do I have to some kind of automation or an app to make this more efficient? And you just keep going again. Once that's addressed and it's resolved, it starts to grow again, and it's going to break somewhere else. It always does. And that's what scaling is, based on a need thing. And eventually, when you start getting good at this, you can predict where it's going to break, or you start to see the indicators and the things that are eventually going to break, and you can get ahead of those. And that's what good CEOs will do, is they'll start to see the lag or the slowdown in their operations, and they go, man, we need a new piece of equipment, or I need better software, or I need to speed the website up, or we need a better service provider, something that's getting ahead of the problem before it breaks. And that's kind of when you start to become a more seasoned entrepreneur. And eventually your company is able to scale based on, just growth. And you mentioned, like, how do I get in front of more people? Well, that's the marketing side of things. There's a lot of different ways now to be creative with marketing. I think organically, without spending any money, go create content, create a YouTube channel, create a podcast, do videos every single day, educate people, entertain people. That's going to get you in front of a lot of eyeballs rather than hiding. And if you're out there sitting around thinking like, well, I'm not that kind of person, or I'm an introvert. Like, all these are excuses. I mean, I don't really tolerate any of those excuses, because I used to have some of those excuses. And guys, if you're hiding from creating things, if you're not putting yourself out there, it's because your purpose is not above your fears. You put your fears above your purpose. And then if you're always going to live your entire life with your fears above your purpose, you're never going to be successful. And that sounds really harsh, but those who have learned to push their fears aside and put their purpose above their fears, we still feel fear. We still fear the criticism and the judgment, but our purpose is strong enough to realize that we're going to execute and operate regardless of what our feelings are, how we feel like we're not motivated. We want the results and willing to go do those kind of things.
That's absolutely right. In fact, if you're going to be a success at this venture, you're going to have to put yourself out there somehow anyways, right? You have to put that product, that service, that widget out there for other scrutiny. So what's the difference between that and put yourself out there on social media, on the video platforms, or on the chat threads, and even just documenting your journey, your learning process? You're still putting yourself out there. And you got to get past that imposter syndrome. And the only way to do that is to step into the fear. You were talking about successful CEOs seeing into the future, knowing their market, seeing the trends. How can, between your podcast, your own experiences, and in your coaching business, what are you seeing? How can people kind of shortcut the learning process? And what do you see as traits and habits of the ones who really get it right?
Well, I think that the number one reason people hire a business coach or join a business coaching community is because they want mistake avoidance. We want to learn the mistakes, not only just from that coach, but their clients. You think about that. We see the mistakes that clients make on a higher scale. So we're looking at different industries. I got 20 different private clients right now. They're all in different industries. And every industry has best practices and do things well, and some of them do things exceptionally well, and some of them do things really poorly. So if you can see the lessons learned from all these different industries, which most people would never see because they're working only within their own industry, you can kind of see like, why aren't you applying this from this industry over here? Like, why can't we do that? And you do these kind of things, and you make these hybrid business models, which are far more successful because you're introducing new ideas and new apps or new automations or new thought processes or workflows into an existing industry that has largely been, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of scenario. That's how most industries tend to operate. And so when you hire a coach or you join an entrepreneurship group with multiple different industry backgrounds, you're going to get different feedback and you're going to get guidance and lessons, especially on those hard decisions that we have to make as business owners. And you'll learn really quickly how to disconnect your emotions from decisions, especially financial decisions, because I find that also is something that exists in a lot of CEOs that are high 7 and 8-figure business owners. They still have a lot of emotional interest in their hard decisions, where I come from an oil and gas background where I was managing hundreds of millions of dollars and was compensated very well to make the right decisions regardless of the financial emotions on a personal level. So I'll expand on that. Let's say that maybe early in my career when I was making $90,000 a year and I was managing $1 million projects, I remember filling out those purchase orders and quotes and things like that and seeing these big numbers with a lot of commas and zeros and just feeling really uneasy. And I felt like a lot of pressure back then to make these decisions because the numbers I was being tasked to manage were much more bigger than my comfort level on a personal level, right?
Mm-hmm.
20 years later into that same industry where I'd learned to make the right decisions based on analysis, risk mitigation, processes, history, repeated value, experience, wisdom, understanding gut feel and things like that, and what kind of works out. I was able to manage those hundreds of millions of dollars without any emotion, because the money thing, if you let it cloud your judgment, a lot of times people will play conservative, and then that's not always the right call. It's not always going to be the right business decision. So when you get around people who are ahead of you, thinking differently on an operational level, and who aren't emotionally invested in smaller dollar values, they'll generally make better decisions because they understand what's on the other side and they can weigh the risk versus the reward instead of thinking about the potential loss. Too many people focus on what they can lose. The winners always think about what is the most I can win without losing this much. Like how can I minimize loss but win the maximum amount? And that's a whole different thought process. And that's why you want to hire coaches or get in the rooms with people who are a little bit further ahead of you.
I think the saying I heard was, success comes from making good decisions. Making good decisions comes from experience, and experience comes from making bad decisions.
True.
But you're talking, build up that experience by taking the action, becoming familiar with it, but also surrounding yourself with others who already have that experience or are doing it alongside you in parallel. Finding coaches, masterminds, training, so that you can learn from other people's bad decisions, other people's experiences, and not have to make all the mistakes yourself. That's I totally agree with that, and that's why I'm a member of a few masterminds and have a coach myself. Tell me, where did you start with your coaching journey? When did you become, from an entrepreneur yourself to sharing that wisdom and helping others become entrepreneurs?
I've been doing it for a very long time in private because for most of that first 40 years of my life, I'll say, I was pretty good at being the MVP in the background and not really caring about being in the spotlight or any of that kind of stuff. I didn't have the motivations based on ego. I was always a competitor, but I didn't need to be in the spotlight or a front stage. And most of that was from insecurities because of, how I look or things like that. And I know I'm saying that to someone that has had a bomb blow up in their face, but we all have the same insecurities. We all have those kind of things that hold us back. I've got a skin condition called vitiligo where I'm literally covered head to toe in white spots. I got a lot of white spots all over my face and my arms and my legs. And so I grew up with people asking me what was wrong with me. Well, why do you look like that? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And when you grow up that way, you just kind of realize, like, if I just don't put myself out there, then people will quit asking and I can just go win in the back. So I had all the comfortable excuses of not putting myself out there for that first 40 years of my life. And it's because I'd become financially successful. I had a family. I had a full-time career. I was running businesses. I had all these good common excuses that most people would use. But the real answer was I just really didn't feel comfortable putting myself out there. I didn't like how I looked on camera. I didn't want to put my voice out there. I didn't want to do those kind of things. And so when I wrote the book, it was kind of the first way for me to take the knowledge that I had and the experience that I had and put it in some way that could potentially impact people. And it became a #1 bestseller on Amazon and sold 10,000 copies and started impacting people, and people wanted to interview me. And then I was like, oh shit, that was what I was trying to avoid. I was just trying to write a book and put it out there. And so I don't run away from fears. I just realized that I needed to become the right person to carry the title of that book and to be able to share my story. And so I had the fear of public speaking, and I had to hire a speaking coach, and I joined Toastmasters, and I showed up every week, and I raised my hand, and I made myself uncomfortable because I knew that that's the only way I could improve. And so within 6 months of being in public speaking and having a speaking coach and kind of getting over those things and doing videos every single day to practice what I was learning, eventually I was winning competitions in Toastmasters. I was going 3 rounds. I got the second place in all of Houston. I went 3 rounds deep on their competition, their annual competition. And that shows you that things can change really quickly. If I can go from stage fright to winning 3 rounds of competitions in 6 months, that's a testament of what is the work that I'm willing to do. And the videos were my stage, because most people will make excuses about not getting enough stages. They're not getting enough practice. Well, speaking on camera is no different than speaking on stage. You just have more, you can move around a little bit more on the stage, right? You still got to entertain, you still got to educate, you still got to enunciate, you still got to be able to do things. And so that's what I did. And eventually that led to the podcast, and that led to doing things video-wise and content creation and stuff like that as I became more comfortable doing it and more confident doing it eventually. So where that came from is I was racing cars in 2015, and I had a crash. I had a near-death experience of my own. I hit a concrete wall at 120 miles per hour at the track. And as I was approaching that wall, I said to myself, well, here I go, because, mental calculation, I got bad odds. I'm in a 2-door sports car, high rate of speed, about to hit concrete wall. Like, this is not good. And in that moment, I was very peaceful and I didn't feel any fear. But after that, I'm looking at the wreckage on the back of the ambulance, and I'm just looking at this wreckage, and I started asking myself, what if I would have died right there? And then you start thinking about, well, had I died, how would I be remembered? And for most people, when we answer that question, we just look at the circle of people that we know or the family members that we kind of resonate with, and maybe they passed before us, and we think, well, how were they remembered? I was kind of like that guy. How was he remembered, right? And answer came really quickly. I would have been nice, rich guy, cool cars, gone too soon. Those are the cliche phrases we tend to hear, like, oh, he was so nice. Oh, man, he had some cool cars, very successful. Oh, man, gone too soon. Hope he's upstairs racing with the big man. And, like, we hear these cliche phrases. And the thing that was really missing from my own assessment of that was impact. Like, I want to be the one that was remembered for, that guy changed my life. That guy helped me when I was down. The guy that created global impact, not just perimeter impact of people around us, because each of us can impact our families and our close friends. But do we really have the courage to put ourselves out there and start impacting people that we don't even know? And that's a much harder journey, because like I said, you had to grow to become that person to be able to do that. And so where I started thinking about impact was, what are the things that people come to me for advice? that's an indicator. Everybody's got a different way to create impact. And for me, people would see my lifestyle, people would see the things that I was enjoying, and they would say, hey, how do I start a business? How do I do that? You know, how did you do that? And they've been asking me that for 15 years at that point. And so I said, that's how I'm going to best impact this world, is by teaching people confidence and business principles, so that maybe that can change their lifestyle, which will also impact their generational legacy of everybody that follows them. So that's the best way I can think about creating my own impact right now. And that's subject to change, right? We always want to have change. But right now, that's what I'm focused on. So yeah, long question, long answer to a short question. But at that accident is when I started to put my purpose above my fear.
You know, and that's exactly what I was thinking the whole time. Is you put, you know, that vision, that purpose. You know, it's as though the same way I look at, so to speak, my situation is that I have an ethical obligation to share what I've learned. There was a saying, and I repeat it all the time, is that maybe someday the story of your struggle may be someone else's blueprint for survival. And it may not be that serious. Maybe it's just my story is successful, help somebody else be successful. But that's how our society works. And that's the whole point of impact is become the best of you, so that you can share that, best part of you and what you've learned with your community, so you can raise the whole community up. And I commend you. I thank you for doing exactly that. Where can people contact you, learn more about you? Where do they find you?
Yeah, easy. My website is 365driven.com, which is also the name of my podcast. So you can go visit that website and you'll find my book, my social media channels, and also all my community information. So Aaron, I really appreciate this conversation, man. And, thank you for having me on. I think that we had some good topics here. And, as someone that's also had a near-death experience, I know that you're purpose-driven.
Again, I really do appreciate you coming on, sharing some of your wisdom. And I want to ask you, before I let you go, is there anything I haven't asked you yet that I should have? Anything else you want to share?
No, I'm an open book, and I don't really keep things, secret nowadays. I just think that honesty and authenticity is very important, especially in this space that we're in. And, I'm really out there just trying to make sure people are getting honest answers and based on results. I think there's too much fluff out there. I think there's too many coaches who have become rich just by selling coaching packages, but have never really done anything before they were rich from selling coaching packages. So, it really created some hesitation for me to come into the industry sooner, because I knew that I was going to be compared against a lot of these people now that I get compared to nowadays. But I look back at their history and back at mine and realize I'm doing things out of integrity, and I've got the financial box checked already. So I'm really focused on impact and legacy.
And putting those dollars before the experience of know-how, right? Well, thank you very much once more. And Tony, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.